today we're talking about the secret to account-based marketing and sales, and it's a really hot topic these days because you can do more now than ever before at the top of the funnel in your sales process with the advancements in technology, and we're talking new. One guy here that knows more about it than probably anybody else from his days at Marketo, but we got Jon Miller here, co-founder and CEO of Engagio, myself, Max Altschuler, founder and CEO of Sales Hacker Inc., and we're getting into a really meaty topic. I think we got a lot of actionable information for you today. So before we get too far into it, any questions you have, chime in on the GoToWebinar app itself, or get on Twitter and use the SH Webinar hashtag to ask questions or interact. Anything you want to share from that, obviously, if you have any questions for Jon and myself, we will be checking the hashtag after this. Obviously, the questions in the GoToWebinar questions panel also will be getting to Q&A towards the end of the hour once we're done with the content. So we are taking all the Q&A from Twitter and from GoToWebinar, putting it all together, and we'll have that for you at the end. Anything that we don't get to, we'll try and answer afterwards. The recording of this webinar will be posted on the site, I think, by the end of the day tomorrow. So stay tuned. Let your team know if anybody wants to see the slides, listen to the conversation. Saleshacker.com will have it for you. And then tweet at us at saleshacker at Engagio, and we will get back to you on Twitter. So without any further delay, you're going to hear from both Jon and myself throughout this, and it should be pretty engaging. So definitely ask your questions, chime in. And Jon, I'm going to let you take it from here. Let's get it started.
Cool. Thanks, Max. Love the topic. So what the framework of what we're going to cover today is we're going to start by introducing just the whole idea of why it's important to be account-based in your prospecting, in your sales, and then we'll go over the simple three-step process for doing it, including some really actionable tips for how can you run it in your organization. And then we'll wrap up with what I call sales hacks for account-based everything. Some just real sort of tactical things you can do that will make the whole system work better. So again, I'm Jon Miller. I am currently the CEO and co-founder here at Engagio. And as Max alluded to previously, I was the co-founder at Marketo, where I spent about 9 years. So I've spent pretty much my entire career thinking about this kind of stuff. So with that, let's dive into why is account-based everything so important these days? And, to set it up, if you go back to my days at Marketo, we were, one of the fastest growing software companies, and we did it on the back of a really strong demand generation system where we, drank our own champagne, we ran campaigns, we created content, and we grew really fast. But what happened was, that worked well when we were aiming at the SMB, the smaller companies segment of the market. As we tried to move up market, and as we tried to sell to the enterprise, as well as trying to do more cross-sell to our existing customer base, we now had a named list of accounts. And it turned out all the strategies that we had used so effectively to drive the small business weren't working to reach these named accounts. And we came up with an analogy to kind of explain it. What we were doing with the traditional demand gen small nets, or going small companies, was we were fishing with a net, where we run our programs and we didn't care which fish we caught. We just cared, did I catch enough fish? And then you can send them to sales development to qualify, and then to sales to sell. And the problem was, once you have a named list of accounts, it didn't make sense anymore to just wait around to see if the right people from these right accounts happened to swim into our net. We needed to find ways to reach out to them proactively. Instead of fishing with a net, we needed to learn how to fish with a spear, and that's what being account-based was all about. So because of that, we changed our strategies, and frankly, marketing departments, across the world are embracing the whole idea of account-based marketing, and it's become one of the hottest things, at least in the marketing side of the world. You can see where I started Engagio and how the trend has continued, since then. But there's a huge but that I've been telling marketers, and that is that marketing isn't sufficient for reaching out to these target accounts. According to Topo, marketing by itself is only getting about 15% penetration. And it makes sense. If all you have is marketing, all you're doing is you're running some ads, you may be holding an event, you can send some direct mail campaigns. If you really want to reach out to the right people from the right company, you have to have a human reach out to them. You have to call them, you have to email them, you have to reach out socially. And that's not the world of marketing, that's the world of sales and sales development. And so, many people on the phone, on the audience today probably know this, but just as we've seen account-based marketing rise, we've seen the rise of account-based sales development and account-based selling as well. Because it just makes so sense, because the sales development function is the most effective way to reach out to target accounts. And so what I've seen in a lot of organizations is you have the marketing team adopting account-based marketing. You've got the sales development team adopting account-based sales development. Maybe you have the sales team adopting account-based sales. But the problem is these words, these ideas perpetuate the silo, perpetuate the gaps, that these are different things. And the reality is we're not talking about different things. We're talking about the process of orchestrating marketing and sales development and customer success and sales and even your executives working together to achieve your goal, which is to reach out and connect with the target accounts. That's why I have given up on the word account-based marketing. I've given up on the word account-based sales development. I think that we should be calling this thing what it really is, which is account-based everything. So hopefully I've convinced you of the advantages of doing this. So now what I want to do is I want to really step into the specific process for how you do it. And Max will have some great actionable ideas and tips for how to kind of support it along the way. So the process, the best way to describe it is let's go back to the old Marketo model, the demand generation model I talked about earlier, where we started with an offer. Like, hey, I have a white paper. Then you'd figure out the channel where you want to promote it. Hey, let's send an email. And then you'd finish up with the segment you want to market it to. So, hey, let's send the email to these people. So it was a process of what, where, and then who. But the whole account-based model flips that around. It starts with the who. Who do we want to reach at which companies? Then it gets into the what. What can I say that will actually resonate and connect with the right people at the time? And only then do you finish with like, all right, how are we going to actually reach out to them? Where are we going to say it? So the three-step process for account-based everything is who, then what, and then where. So starting with the who, there's a lot we can say about the who. I mean, defining your ideal customer profile, getting the data, all sorts of stuff. But I actually just want to make one point today about the who. And that is that not all accounts are created equal. You're going to have different tiers of accounts. And really important, the way you treat each tier and the level of personalization you're going to give to each tier will be different. So at the top of the pyramid, you have a tier 1, which you're going to kind of do the classic account-based outreach to. What I mean by that is you're going to treat each account as a market of one, where you have a detailed, rich account plan, and then you use all the insights in that to create completely customized outreach strategies. That is hard. That does not scale easily. You're probably going to end up, counting those number of accounts on your hands and toes. Here at Engagio, each rep gets 5 tier 1 accounts because of the level of input of research and work we put into each account. Obviously, you want to reach out to more than just 10 or 20 accounts, though. And so you'll probably have then a second tier where you're going to have a lighter level of personalization. What I mean by that is, these people still don't get generic marketing outreach. Every touch to these companies should be personalized and relevant. But instead of completely customized, pieces of content, you can follow, start with templates and then lightly customize them, based upon your research. And because of that, it obviously scales out to a much higher number where you can have hundreds and hundreds of accounts. And then lastly, you might have a tier 3 of other accounts that we're really interested in. And here you may use more traditional non-personalized tactics like marketing programs or more templated sales outreach. But because of that, you can obviously scale that to the thousands of accounts. So I think the most important thing to get successful here is for sales and sales development and marketing, not just to agree on which of the accounts and which tiers each account is in, but also what does that exactly mean for the level of personalization and the level of marketing support, or frankly staying away for each of those accounts. Max, I know you have a bunch to say about account and post-contact selection.
Yeah, I really love both of those last two action slides that you had. So the first one, to flip my funnel, where you had the who last and now who is first. I haven't seen it illustrated like that. That was pretty good that you did, on that slide. And then we'll have obviously the recording up for people so they can take a look at it later. But I thought that, and then the last one you just did with the light, and then getting into the hundreds and thousands. They were both really good illustrations of what we're trying to convey here. So again, to add on to your point, when deciding how many accounts per rep you're going to place in your org, obviously there's a lot of different factors, but I think the main ones are your accounts should be distributed based on what you think the person can handle. So the more people they're dealing with, the more research they have to do, right? So if they're working with 5 companies, but there's 10 stakeholders in each company, then they're really working with 50 people. They're doing a lot of research to get that deal moving through because it's a much bigger deal. So, if you have smaller deals, less stakeholders in each deal, then they can work with more accounts within those deals. So it's really about kind of segmenting out. Obviously, your SMB deals are your smallest deals, so there's probably the least amount of stakeholders. Your mid-market is in the middle, and then your enterprise are your biggest deals with the most amount of stakeholders. So it's about how much you think your reps can handle based on how much research they need to do, how many relationships they need to manage. Within one account, they can manage 10 relationships. Within one company, there could be a lot of different instances of a product. For example, if you wanted to say, okay, I'm selling a sales solution to Google. Google has 45 different instances of Salesforce set up. That means there's 45 different organizations within Google that you have to sell. So obviously, that account, you could probably have one person work that account, and nothing else. So that's an extreme example of distributing your accounts based on enterprise, mid-market, or SMB, depending on how many stakeholders and how much research and how many relationships they have to manage in there. And obviously, it could also be done depending on territory size. Obviously, some territories are larger than others, no matter how you cut it, whether that's geographically or industry-wise or whatnot. The second thing is, when you're getting these contacts, obviously LinkedIn gives you so much information. It's pretty incredible that we have a database out there that people are willing to input their information into, and it's really one of the places where they do it. You get the information before anybody else does. Somebody changes a job, if there's somebody changes a location where they live, it's one of the first places that you can get that information. But if you need other sources, depending on the size of the company that you're looking for, whether they're pre-IPO private companies or whether they're public companies, the information's already out there. I've given you a list on here, PitchBook VC, Capital, Mark, Capture, DataFox, Growbots. There's a lot of different databases that you can look at to go out and find these companies, find information about these companies, and then find out the individual contacts and even their contact info within that organization. And then lastly, talking about still on the who, selecting accounts. So you want to do this based on kind of who's your lowest hanging fruit. So you like to use the tiers in the kind of 500s, thousands capacity. I like to use the tiers in the people who are your ideal customer profile, your lowest hanging fruit. Maybe you can look at your past closed deals and find lookalikes to those companies. So you close the deal in a certain industry with a certain amount of revenue and a certain amount of employees. If you can find other companies that are similar to that, those are low-hanging fruit. Those are likely to close. If you find companies that are using complementary or competing products, those are likely to close. You can use there's a service out there called Datanize, there's BuiltWith, there's HD Data. There's a couple of different companies. If you're selling SaaS, that'll tell you who's using your competitors. So if you're Marketo and you want to know who's using Acton, MailChimp, and HubSpot, you can go into one of those pieces of software and find all the companies that they have that are tagged that are using that software. And that's an example of low-hanging fruit because they're already spending money in your wheelhouse. So keep jobs on, obviously, the job changes, new people buy new things, any pre-qualifiers like funding, M&A events, press, or any other telltale signs that these people are interested in buying. Again, you can go back to LinkedIn and find those things. Somebody changes a job on LinkedIn, and they are somebody that bought from you at a past company. I mean, bang, that's as easy as a low-hanging fruit as it gets. This person already bought from you at another company, and now they just moved to a new company. And if they were a happy customer and they're doing a similar job as before, there's no reason why that shouldn't be, pretty automatic for you. So that's what I would call, my tier one low-hanging fruit right there. But I'll let you take it from here and get into the what.
Cool. Yeah. No, and I think just to comment though, the distinction I think that we're both talking about is there's sort of tiering in terms of quality and ease of sale, and then there's tiering in terms of effort that you have to do to get the sale.
Exactly. Exactly. Well put.
Yeah, and my differences were primarily on the amount of effort, because as you said, selling Google is going to be a lot harder than selling to a 200-person company. So, and that actually leads right into the what, because the whole idea of account-based everything is that when we reach out to these people, we want to reach out in a way that's going to be actually effective, which means to be relevant. And that means we need to understand who they are. Because the thing is, and this is mostly I'm speaking to the sales development reps right now at this point, when we're reaching out to people and we're prospecting, we're reaching out to strangers, right? Because if a salesperson already has a relationship with somebody, i.e. if they were a customer at the last company, right, sales can reach out to them themselves, right? Where sales is looking for help from sales development and marketing is when we're reaching out to people that they don't already know. And that's, we got a name for that when it's done badly. It's cold calling and it's spam. And the reality is I get a lot of this crap myself. I mean, the increase in the number of prospecting emails in the last 2 years is astounding. And most of them suck. You get stuff like this, right? When I see something like this, it's pretty obvious that this person did not spend a lot of time to really understand me or my business. This next one is particularly ironic because it comes from a company that's supposedly in the business of helping sales development do a better job. I mean, some dumb mistakes like broken personalization with the wrong first name and typos. But the real problem with this and many other emails is, it's about them, right? It's not, there's no attempt to really understand what's going to matter to me and my business and to then personalize or customize it accordingly. When I get crap like this, I opt out, I tune out, I toss out. I hit the spam button, which means I've made it impossible for you to ever reach me again, And frankly, I'm hurting your reputation, which means it's going to make it harder for you to reach anybody else. So the question that I ask to everybody involved in this is, why in God's name would you ever risk having the most important people at your most important companies hit the spam button by sending them a crappy generic templated message? We have to find a way to do better. We have to raise our game, and the way we raise our game is by understanding, by being more relevant, and by being more helpful. And this can work. Research from the ITSMA has shown that 75% of executives, the people we're trying to reach, will read unsolicited messages if it contains ideas that might be relevant to their business. And relevant to their business means it is based on an understanding of their industry, and it's based on an understanding of their unique business issues, and that it combines those to actually share some fresh ideas to advance their business. Now, if anybody has read the excellent book, The Challenger Sale, this is going to sound really familiar. It's basically saying the way we can connect with people when we're prospecting to them is by having a challenger sale conversation that teaches them something, and it tailors that according to their specific business. If we can do that, we're going to win on the what side of things. But that requires effort, and that's hard. And that comes back to the tiers I talked about earlier. For a tier 1 account, the most important, the most valuable accounts, you're going to understand every element on this slide. What's happening in their industry, what's happening in their company, who are the different buying centers, how do they relate to each other, what is the context and history of our relationship with this account, what connections or relationships do we have, and then what do we have in common, what can we use as door openers. You're going to put together this rich plan for your tier 1 accounts. But for your tier 2 accounts, you can't spend all that time. You're going to have a much lighter level of effort. And instead of creating a completely customized white paper, maybe you take a template white paper for their industry and stick their logo on the cover and change out the first paragraph and the last paragraph. But the key is to base this on an understanding of their business. Max, Max has a lot more to say on this, so please take it away.
Yeah, again, I really like I think that your last slide, I'll actually go back to it real quick. I think your last slide, every company should have this in their SDR playbook. Some kind of checklist on, are you checking these things? Are you completing all of the pieces of this puzzle that you need to do before you reach out, while you're reaching out, while you're creating that connection? So this is a really interesting slide right here. I'll leave it on for a second. But we're going to go into kind of the door openers part. So in crafting those emails, instead of, obviously if you're a rep and you only have 5 accounts, like, yeah, you should get as manual and as personal as you possibly can. But if you have more room to cover, maybe if you're a smaller company and you're stretched a little more thin, or maybe you have, a wider territory and you don't have the actual time to get that, manual, it doesn't make sense. There's a really good formula, the 10-80-10 formula, and I mapped it out here for you real quickly, but you can use a personalized intro and personalized outro in your emails, and then the body of your email that you send can be targeted to that industry or a couple different common denominators that list segment has. So if you have a list of 1,000 potential, people that you want to send an email to, you can say, I want VPs of sales in, Boston in the healthcare industry, and you have a body put together for those people. And so if you're actually that targeted and you have those common denominators, it's actually going to look pretty personalized, but then taking it to the next level, you've already personalized the intro and the outro. And there's sales and, acceleration companies that have this functionality that actually allow you to pull it in as a dynamic field. So if you put in your spreadsheet that you're sending these messages to, personalized intro, personalized outro columns, and then fill those in your spreadsheet, once you upload that, it should pull in that information just like it pulls in their first name or company name. So that's one way to do it when you're crafting these outreach emails. And then obviously sales and marketing need to work together here. So marketing should be uncovering information for the sales team to be using in that outreach process. So again, if you are talking to VPs of sales, in the healthcare industry or whatever it is, the marketing teams should be supporting the sales teams with relevant news, relevant information that they can share. So there's, again, two types of information. Really, there's value-add content that's external. Like, hey, here's something that's going on in the marketplace. I'm sure you have an opinion on it. Would love to talk about it. Versus something that's internal, like a case study. So when you send something to somebody and you're selling to them and you want to create value in the message, you want to add value to their day, and you want to use almost like another method, like a Trojan horse to get in the door, that is, hey, let's talk about this thing that you're very interested in and pertains to your business, and then later on they can learn about your case study. But if you go right in with the case study, it might not be very relevant to them, and you're just pushing your own message. And there's, famous entrepreneur Gary Vaynerchuk wrote a book called Jab, Jab, Right Hook, and his whole mantra is add value, and then you've earned the right to ask. So before you make that ask, before you start sending your internal sales content, work with marketing, have marketing, maybe even weekly, or invest in some, technology that does this, but surface information that pertains to your industry and theirs, or your offering and their industry, that you can serve them, that acts as, value-add content before you start sending case studies or testimonials or, your value prop and whatnot. What do you think, John?
Cool. Yeah, I think I love some of the tools out there, like you mentioned, like Charlie App and Reportive, to kind of get those insights, especially for those tier 2 and tier 3 accounts, right, where you're not going to necessarily do all that kind of work up front. And I think the other thing, just to drive the home point on all this, and I say this as a marketer, by training, but you got to actually keep marketing away from a bunch of these tier 1 and tier 2 accounts. Right, don't put them into a generic nurture stream. These are the most important people from the most important accounts. Every touch should be reviewed, personalized, reviewed, and approved by a human who cares about the relationship with that account. Yep. And that's a mindset that's, I think, new for a bunch of people. Okay, so where we are, we've picked our accounts, we picked the people, we know who we're going after, and now we've done the work to understand what we can actually say to them. How can we have challenger sales style conversations with them? Now it's time to actually go do the outreach. Now, on the marketing side, there's definitely stuff marketing can do. You can hold events. Dinners in their city is a great reason to reach out to somebody. And obviously, there's almost no substitute for the quality of a personal inbound interaction. The challenge with events, though, is you have to get them to show up. And I believe strongly you're not going to get an executive to show up at your event by sending them a generic marketing message, or even possibly by having the outreach come from a junior person at your company. If you want to get an executive to show up, I think that the invitation needs to come in a personalized way from an executive of equal or higher title from your organization. Direct mail plays a big role as a great way to reach out to target accounts. Think about how many emails you get per day versus how many packages show up on your desk. And if you do get a package from a company, that's a great reason for the SDR to call and email as a follow-up to the package. Online advertising can create air cover and awareness in the account, so when the calling starts to happen, there's already, the beaches are softened, to use a military analogy. And then you can do other things like web social ads and web personalization. But the real core of account-based everything outreach is the sales development team, the human touch, human emails that are, as I said, personalized, reviewed, and approved by somebody who cares about that account, phone calls and voicemails, and then social touches. So lots of cool channels here. I know, Max, you've got a lot of thoughts to say on this as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think the main 4 types of scalable outreach and the channels that most people are using today are email, phone with voicemail, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And so you want to have a cadence that's going to allow you to, or a sequence of this that's going to allow you to stay on their radar and also potentially connect with them. So obviously there's a lot of tools out there that let you see when people open emails. Maybe that's a great time to call. They're already looking at what you've sent. If you can call them while they're looking at your email, you might be able to catch them off guard or catch them at a point where they have a minute to talk about it, or even just time for a discovery call, time for like, hey, you're already looking at it. Let me get a minute on your calendar. I'll take 2 minutes of your time right now, but let me set up a longer time to talk so that we can really explore this thing. So I think
even better is when they're visiting your website, because then they're even more likely to actually be at their desk and not on their mobile device. The key though is don't be creepy. Like, hey, you opened my email. The best thing is just
you don't have to mention that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, great, your timing is wonderful. I was just looking at you.
Yep. And it's funny because most of the people that you're calling, especially if you're not selling to tech sales, they don't know a lot of this technology exists. Like, they don't know that you can call them while they're looking at your website or the email or whatnot. So it's a great way to do it. It's smart. It's taking advantage of what you have at your disposal as a salesperson. I think what I put on here is effective frequency. Another thing about using LinkedIn and Twitter to your advantage is there's an old advertising adage that's it's like a 7x7 rule. Effective frequency takes someone 7 touches or points of contact to remember or recall your brand. So if you saw a quarter of the McDonald's logo, the golden arches, or after seeing the full logo 7 times, you would know, okay, that's the McDonald's logo. So if you can use LinkedIn and Twitter, and if your prospect is on LinkedIn or Twitter, to stay on their radar, stay in their face, if you're sending them emails and calling them, it's just another way to say, hey, I'm here. If you're favoriting and retweeting their tweets, if you're connecting with them or following them on Twitter, if you're connecting with them on LinkedIn, if you're sending them an email, if you're liking their content, if they're posting to LinkedIn, your name just keeps popping up. And at some point, they're going to, oh, where do I know that name from? Maybe it sounds familiar. And that's really what you want. You want to get to a point where they sound, they're familiar with your name or your company or even your photo. So, create a cadence or sequence on outreach and a number of touches over a number of days. This varies in the industry, no matter who you talk to. I'm sure it's going to be different. There is no silver bullet, but you can definitely test your own using a lot of these different tools. And some people like to do 7 touches over 21 days. Some people 9. Some people say 21 days. Screw that. Never stop. It's different for everyone. So test it out for yourself. But first day would look something like they get an email in the morning with a phone call and a voicemail in the afternoon. Second day, they get a phone call in the morning with a tweet, a follow, and LinkedIn Connect and an email. In the afternoon, 2 days later, you do another mixture of that. 3 days after that, you do another mixture, and that's how you create a cadence. So you do that over a certain amount of time. You want to test that out. If you Google sales cadence at this point, you can probably see 10 to 20 different companies talking about what they do. So you can probably take one of those and start there. But that's something that you want to establish definitely immediately if you're not already doing so.
But I think it almost matters less what your exact sequence is. I think there's a great line I heard from Matt Edmondson over at Everstring, which is that these sequences are like diets, right? They work when you stick to them. And so no matter what you end up choosing, make sure you follow it consistently.
Yep, like that.
So, I think I'm a big fan of these sequences, but I actually encourage everybody to think even bigger, because the typical sequence is about one SDR going to one person. So you got one X going to one O on the board. But that's not what account-centric thinking is all about, right? There's a whole team on their side, right? There are multiple influencers. There are multiple decision makers, right? There's executives. There's finance. There's IT procurement, right? And if you're single-threading your outreach into the account, you put yourself at tremendous risk because any one person can say no or be on vacation or just ignore you. So you need to think about how are you going to reach out to all the O's, all the people on their team. But then don't be a hero and do it by yourself because you've got all the X's on your team. It's not just you, the lone SDR. There's you, but there's also marketing. There's also your sales executive, and there's also your company executives. And so I encourage people to think about plays. And a play, like a football coach, maps all the X's and all the O's together to sort of say who does what in order to achieve our goal of going against this account. Now, on your team, this is the people on your side, there are lots of different positions or roles. So, there's the coach. And the coach is the guy or woman who designs the play, who writes the playbook, right? And that might be an ambitious SDR. It might be the SDR manager. Maybe it's marketing. Ideally, it's all those groups working together in conjunction. Then there's somebody who decides that they're going to call the play. We're going to run this play at this account. And for Tier 1 and a Tier 2 account, that should almost always be the account executive or the account owner. For a Tier 3 or lower account, maybe it can be left to the discretion of an individual SDR. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, you have lots of players on your team, right? And imagine a football team. You wouldn't staff it with just 11 wide receivers because they'd get crushed. And wouldn't staff it with 11 linemen because they'd stand there and the ball wouldn't move. If you want to move the ball down the field, you need to staff the team with multiple players in multiple positions that work together as a team to achieve the goal. So when you're doing prospecting plays, marketing can support it with ads and direct mail and events. Your account executive can reach out to some people while you're reaching out to some people. Your executives can be reaching out to executives at their account. The key is that you have some way to coordinate all of these different people into a sequence of actions, and that's what a play is really all about. Okay, so hopefully we convinced you now of the who, the what, and then the where of account-based everything. I just want to hit a couple other key points. The first is kind of technical, and this is more for the sales operations folks. But as everybody knows who spends time with Salesforce, your leads don't tie to your accounts, which makes it really hard to do anything account-centric. You could have hundreds of people who work at a target account in your database and you have no ability to see their activity or how they relate up to the account. And I'm sure everybody's seen the problem. You're trying to close a deal at an account, like say this week, and then some executive from that company shows up on your website and downloads a piece of content, and you route that lead to an SDR who calls them up and who doesn't even know that executive is supposed to be signing the contract with you that evening, and everybody's annoyed. So if you want to be account-centric, you have to do what I call lead to account matching. You have to find a way to tie your leads to the right account. You can do that with a tool like Engagio or another tool that's fuzzy logic matching, looking at their company name and their email address and where they're physically located. You tie that together to say this lead's part of this account. You can convert it to a contact or leave it as a lead, but the key is that you get the connection tied together. Which sort of brings us to my next related point, which is more for the inbound sales development reps. But in an account-centric world, we have to throw out the notion of the lead or the marketing qualified lead, the MQL, the SQL. Those concepts are outdated in an account-centric world. What we need are marketing qualified accounts and sales qualified accounts. Because that's what we care about. We don't care about this one junior person who came by our booth at a trade show. What we care about is, do one of my target accounts have depth and breadth of engagement? Am I getting activity from the right people at that account so that holistically I know something's going on and I should reach out to them? And I don't have to call the junior person who stopped by the booth at the trade show. You know, if I get 15 people from a company all coming by my booth, I can call the most senior one. You know, that's what I mean by a marketing qualified account. Okay, to wrap things up, I did want to just talk a little bit about technology for all this. And the reality is there are so many different technologies out there today for every step of the process. What I've done here is I've taken the who, what, where, and then broken it up into sub-steps. So who is all about selecting the right accounts and prioritizing them, and the context of figuring out who you're actually going after. The what is primarily about understanding the account, and in some cases creating personalized content and messaging. The where is about running the different interactions across the ads, the website, the phone, the human emails, events, direct mail, and so on, and then orchestrating those into coordinated plays. And then lastly, it's the infrastructure around things like lead to account matching, marketing qualified accounts, and so on. You can see lots of different players in the different categories. You know, my company, Engagio, you know, works with the infrastructure side. We also are a sales acceleration email tool that competes with tools like SalesLoft and Outreach and ToutApp. But where we go beyond is that we make it an account-centric, multi-step, multiplayer play, which is really what the orchestration piece, you know, is all about. So you can kind of see where Engagio fits in, who we compete with, and then who are all the companies that we might partner with, kind of across the board. If you want to learn more, I do have a book out there called The Complete and Clear Guide to Account-Based Marketing. It's normally $20, but you can grab it for free at engagio.com/guide. You register to get a free code. And with that, you know, I actually finish every presentation I give with what I call the tweetable takeaways for those of you who are too lazy to think about what to tweet yourself. But rather than read these, I'll just leave them up, and you know, we can go into the Q&A.
Yeah, so spoken like a true marketer, of course. This is great. Tweetable takeaways. I like it. So I want to know, so you were a co-founder and CMO at Marketo. So obviously well done there. What's changed? I mean, so what did you do at Marketo around this? And what's changed between now and then that you've seen in the marketplace that allows us to do it differently, like allows you to do it differently this time?
Well, I think one of the big things that's changed is just the declining effectiveness of the inbound lead model. You know, back in the early days of Marketo, all I had to do was write a blog post about some topic, and I'd rank for that term on the first page of Google. Now, every company is doing content and, you know, creating, doing social strategies and all that kind of thing. It's much harder to reach out to a target audience using that way, and we have to, you know, we can't always wait around for them to come to us anymore. We have to find efficient ways to reach out to them. And then the other thing is I think people are realizing that with the inbound model, if you just wait for them to come to you, you end up getting junior people who are looking for column B fodder, i.e. they already have a project and they're just looking for possible vendors to talk to. But if you can proactively reach out to the right person at the right company with a challenger sale conversation, you can now then embrace, you know, a kind of a solution selling strategy, help create the deal, you're column A, and maybe you end up being sourcing it, which means bigger deals, more strategic deals, you know, the whales that you actually really want to be going after. And then the last thing that changed is just the emergence of technologies like Engagio and others that actually let us do this stuff at better scale more efficiently.
Awesome. Great answers. So we'll get into some of the Q&A from the audience here, and I think a good one to start with is, do you have any examples or, you know, your favorite play that you guys run or you advise people to run or that you've heard of?
Yeah, let me share two. You know, for the new business prospecting world, you know, we have a play that we just call Open the Door. And what it does is it starts off with a 2-week period where we buy ads at the target account to sort of soften the beach. And at the same time in that 2-week period, that's when we're doing some research to really understand what messages can we craft that will really resonate to that account. At the end of that 2-week period, we drop a direct mail package, to the decision maker. And the way it's actually designed is that it's got some cookies in it that get distributed to more people in the office. So there's like a splash effect of not just getting the one person, but we're getting some of the influencers too. And as soon as that package gets delivered, that creates a task, which then kicks off the series of triple and double touches from sales and sales development. So the quarterback who called the play, the executive, the account executive, reaches out to the decision maker who got the package. And at the same time, you have the SDR start reaching out to a bunch of the other influencers and at the account. And I said it real fast, but the triple touch is the email followed up with a voicemail or phone connect, and then the social touch, and then the double touch is just the email voicemail, combo. So you run that over like a 2-week period.
The direct mail is a kicker there too. That works really well. It's actually underrated.
Yeah, well, the ad plus the direct mail kind of creates additional reason to call, awareness. The other play that we run is just totally on the other end side of things. Like we're doing a dinner in Boston next week. And so we're trying to get 20 executives to show up at this dinner. So what we did is, my sales development rep wrote 20 personalized emails, or no, more than 20, wrote a bunch of personalized emails to invite various executives. He wrote them in our tool and set them to come from me. So all I had to do is I got a task to go just quickly review the email to make sure it was good. I hit OK, and boom, that invite came from me. So it was a great way to scale highly personalized relevant emails with an executive-to-executive invite.
Yeah, which will convert so much higher than if it's sent from an SDR, and obviously saves you, whose time is probably the most valuable in the organization, that precious time.
I just approved, I think, 85% of them, but there were a couple I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I know that guy, or I have some context to tweak it a little bit further. But it was, that's an example of a simple plan.
Yeah, when I was in college and we were selling social media to real estate agents, and I think one of the best things that we can do that really boosted business was after we closed the deal with a real estate agent, we might send flowers to the office. And then so when flowers come to the office, it's really like it's for them, but everyone else in the office is like, whoa, who sent you flowers? And that piques everyone's interest, and we got a lot of business through the rest of the individual real estate offices through something like that. That was like a small statement, really. I think it was $29 on 1-800-Flowers or whatever it was, but it like moved mountains for us when we were running a small business. So so let's see, we got a couple more questions here. Now they're pouring in. So what has your approach been to outbounding to accounts that are already using a competitor?
Well, so few thoughts. First of all, if we're talking about a big enterprise, it's very likely that there are other buying centers at that same enterprise that aren't using the competitor. And so part of your account mapping research needs to understand where the white space is. Now, if we're talking about a smaller company with only one buying center, or you're trying to actually get into a buying center that does use the competitor, I think the key to keep in mind is that, we're talking about a long-term strategy here, right? Account-based sales development is not a one-and-done, call them, they say no thank you, you cross them off the list and move on to the next one. You've done the work to pick the accounts that matter, so you're going to invest, right? And just because they use a competitor doesn't mean you can't stay in touch and provide assistance and value, over time. And I pretty much guarantee that if you can actually do that well, if you can actually connect with that decision maker and share relevant business ideas with them, that you earn the right for the right hook to say, hey, by the way, when's your renewal up, with that competitor, and at least get your way into the conversation. But it requires a long-term view, which, by the way, is also a different set of metrics.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's actually, sometimes it can be a great thing because you can get an answer. I mean, like the worst problem to have is not that they're using another competitor. The worst problem is never receiving an answer from someone and just staying in like zombie mode or limbo. So at least in that case, if you do your job well enough, you can get an answer on when that contract is up or when they'll be looking for, you know, a new solution, how they like that solution. You already know that they need a product in that category and that they have the money to spend on it. And if you can find the, you know, the person who's making that decision or the key stakeholders, you're in a pretty good place. So as long as you can be, you know, as long as you don't have your funding running out or something like that and you can be patient, it's not a bad position to be in. You want to find out as much information as you can and, you know, play your cards right. But I don't think it's the worst thing that could happen. So just I think we got time for like one more question here. What do you think, John? You good for one more?
Yeah, one more is good.
All right, cool. So how long would you recommend a templated body should be for an email that you're getting? So you were a CMO at Marketo, pretty big company. You're a CEO at Engagio. You're getting these emails all the time. As somebody who's getting these emails and somebody who runs a company that's sending these emails, what do you typically recommend?
I mean, by definition, this is where the work pays off. You know, like I keep a library of good ones and bad ones. You know, it might be fun to do a webinar someday where we're like,
yes,
walk through, look at this crappy one, look at this crappy one, hey, look at this good one. But what the good ones have in common is that they are helpful, they are relevant to me and my business. You know, and I guess that let me make that point. It's less good to say, hey, I see you went to Harvard. My brother went to Harvard. You know, or I see you like the Giants. I like the Giants too. Like that kind of rapport building stuff is fine, but it's so much more powerful to really, you know, show something that understands how my business works and gives me some thought-provoking idea for kind of how to do it. I'll share one tactical example just because it's top of mind. I'm running a fast-growing startup based in San Mateo, California, which is about a 30-minute drive south of San Francisco. And a bunch of my employees live in San Francisco. You know, so some can take the train, right? But a bunch of the big companies like Google, like they bus people, you know, down. I can't afford a bus though. I got a really relevant prospecting email the other day from a new startup that's basically starting a bus service, you know, from the San Francisco down to San Mateo, right? Yeah. Which is, you know, based on, I'm really relevant to that. You know, they're like, companies your size in San Mateo have this need. We can help solve that. You know, and that was way better than any kind of sort of, you know, dear John, we know people in common.
Yeah. And they knew your business. They understood the pain, and the timing was correct. And yeah, that's great. So cool. Well, thanks a lot, John. That was amazing. Do you have anything else you want to add or share before we sign off?
You know, I assume we mostly have people on the sales side of the house, you know, on this call, you know, and I think that, you know, when you hear your marketing team talking about account-based marketing, you know, you should, you know, point out to them that that perpetuates the silo, you know, and you know, that what we really need is a way to coordinate and orchestrate all these activities and work together. And that's going to be the most effective way for us to achieve everybody's goals.
I agree. Well, thanks for joining us today, John. That was awesome. And thank you all for participating, listening in. We will have the recording up by the end of the day tomorrow. If you have any questions, again, at SalesHacker, at Engagio on Twitter. We will, you know, try and get to them on there. And then hopefully we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.